Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Bible Illustrated Hands. Today's question comes from Richard Benitez. He said, "Now I'm confused. I originally thought Bojan was a monk, then I thought Bojan was a priest or seminarian, all because of very well spoken and broad knowledge of the states and history. So, what is Bojan?" Thank you for your question, Richard, and I thought I did this draw my life thing that was at one point really popular with other YouTubers, but I thought I jump the bandwagon just as it, breaks off from the train and falls off to its doom into a deep, dark abyss. So, I was born in 96 to my parents, Nada and Bane. I was their first child, and one of the most random things you'll hear about me was that my mother, our family friend drove my mother to the maternity ward as she was giving birth to me. And that friend was a grandmaster of Masonic Lodge, which, by the way, didn't influence my my negative opinion of the Freemasons at all. I mean, he's still our family friend, but still not a fan of Freemasons. When I was born, I didn't have a name for some 2 weeks. There were a couple of names. There were a couple of names thrown around, like Sergian, which is Sergius, Vladimir. I think those are the two main. Also Lazar or Lazarus. Then suddenly, as I said, I was nameless for 2 weeks. Then my granny just said, "Why don't you name him Bojan?" And that was it. It was just spur of the moment thing. I live in Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia. It is positioned upon the two rivers, Sava and Danube, and it's a pretty large city. I like it a lot, even though the climate isn't the best. I have lived here my entire life, and I plan to spend the rest of my life here. I don't plan to move ever unless some horrible war happens in the meantime. A half and a year later, my baby sister was born, Milica. There was no issue at her name. She basically got the name of my other grandmother, Milica. She died. My granny Milica died when I was very little. I don't remember her. She died of Parkinson's disease. But even though I don't remember her, I feel her presence through the stories of others, and those are such powerful stories. She was a really, a great and devoted mother. She even made gibanica for Tito. Gibanica is a traditional Serbian dish and probably one of my favorites. It's like this layered cheese pie, and it's the best thing ever. Anyway, she died, as I said. I don't remember her, but it is what it is. We lived in Voždovac suburbs of Belgrade, and I would say that I had a very, very happy childhood. Now, mind you, these were the 90s, which were very dark period for Serbia, because we had idiot politicians that kept pushing us into different wars or causing wars. So criminality abounded. The inflation was at all-time high. At one point, we even had a $50 billion bill. Can you imagine that? Can you wrap your head around that number? I doubt you can. However, my other granny, Gospava, you remember her, the one who named me, and the one you probably prayed for if you followed my channel for quite some time. She was a butcher, and thanks to her butchering skills, We always had a stable supply of meat, which was sort of, a luxury during the 90s. I say I was a pretty outgoing child. I was always around my apartment building, running around, playing with other children. When I was little, I was riding my tricycle, and my granny followed me, and at one point I fell, and I practically lost all of my front teeth. Now this has led to a curious habit of mine, that whenever there's a soft and tough portion of something, for example bread, I always like the soft thing. For example, I'm not a huge fan of the crust, but I am fan of the sweet center. Now this has started to leave me as I entered my late 20s. So now I'm had more tough portions than middle portions, but that worked well because everyone likes the tough portions, so I could have the middle. This is the most important thing you will learn about me ever. Also, when I was little, there was this construction site behind my building that was there since forever, and there was this huge movable gate, like on the rails. And at one point I entered the construction sites, and my friends, closed the gate behind me, and they stood on the gate, hey, let me out. But they started pushing gate back and forth, until it jumped off the rails and fell on me. Thankfully, nothing happened. Literally, my dad immediately got me and gave me a good shower. I attended the local elementary school, which was, pretty nice. It was named after Filip Filipovic, who's a famous poet of ours. He's essentially our Homer. He was a blind poet who played gusle, which is a traditional instrument from the Balkans, which only has a single string upon which you place the bow. I usually like to joke that gusle was actually a faulty violin that was sold to someone from the Balkans, and it sort of, spread around. Yeah, so I was born in 96, in the case I haven't put it here. At around 95, I've lost my paternal grandfather. I don't remember him much. I usually remember him, lying in bed a lot because he was sick. But he would, whenever we would visit Granny and him, he would always peel apples for me, and that is, I have sort of, fond memories of him. After he died, we lived in a really cramped apartment at Voždovac municipality. So, a year after Grandpa died, my granny, Gospava, suggested that we move in with her at her apartment at Vračar municipality, which is a center municipality. And that changed my life in a multitude of ways. First of all, in my old apartment building, there were a lot of children, like crazy amount of children, and we would play all the time. However, in my new apartment building, there wasn't a single child. Like, it was all old people, and my sister and I, we would literally go back and forth around the building looking for children to play with. Nothing, literally nothing. So that was that. So I sort of I wouldn't say I became a loner, but I sort of learned how not to need other people, in order to entertain myself. I was pretty good at drawing even before I moved. I would usually, copy things from children's books. And I think I have a lot of my old drawings still, preserved somewhere, but I would have to look for them and show them to you at some time, even though I wouldn't be a fan of that, because, it's always cringy to show your poor artwork. In 96, we got our first computer. Actually, we had a computer back at Voždovac, but I don't know what happened to it, to be quite honest. But anyway, a couple of things shaped the future me. First was the computer. The second was getting the Nintendo Entertainment System. The old one, not the Super Nintendo, but the Cube one. And I'll focus primarily on these two. Because then I became a video game buff, and that is when my English skills started, to shape. Especially because, I really try to understand what everyone was saying. I was / am a huge fan of Super Mario Brothers. I don't know why. Now remember, in 90s, Serbia was under, international sanctions. That meant that economy was simply atrocious. And that essentially you couldn't order anything from abroad. The only way to get something from abroad was if somebody traveled there, and then again it was very restricted, and bring something to you. So my uncle's former girlfriend brought me the Nintendo, and there were 3 games. I think it was Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3. And once for a New Year's, she brought me like 10 other games that I don't know if I do hope the children today can feel joy at things like that when everything's so available. There's internet, you can port all of these games. I don't know. I do hope that they have something akin to feeling such joy at such silly things, So I was playing, a lot of games. And when my English really started to improve, I got Heroes 2, which is one of Heroes of Might and Magic, which is one of my favorite video games ever, Heroes of Might and Magic 1, 2, and 3. And there was an installation for additional game on the Heroes 2 called Meridian 59. Now, Meridian 59 was the first massively played multiplayer online game. It it didn't age well, but if any of you are gamers out there, a lot of things that you do in online games, most of it comes from actually Meridian 59. Now, I couldn't play it because, one, internet was very bad. It was the age of dial-up. It was very expensive, but most importantly, I couldn't pay for it because again, we were under sanctions. But there was a help file to Meridian 59, which is essentially a manual, and I kept reading it over and over and over again, and I read it with this huge Morton Benson dictionary, Serbian English dictionary, and it really helped, learn the vocabulary, if not grammar. But, those things, took a time to shape. So now you're probably wondering, well, where's God in all of this? I mean, he certainly wasn't mentioned this far, but for some reason or the other, I was always curious about God, even when I was little. We have some family in Bosnia, in this village called Agići, and next to my grandmother aunt's house, there was this beautiful white-blue mosque. And it was the most beautiful sight for me. And I would keep pestering my aunt, that is aunt grandmother, to take me there. Like, take me to the church, take me to the church, take me to the church. So she brought me. She found a woman. She found a woman who had the key to the mosque, and when they brought me to the mosque, I don't know what it's called, but that thing that where Muslim clerics hold their sermons, I immediately, climbed there, and I was so happy. And my aunt was like, should he be there? And the Muslim woman said, no, fine, he's fine. Like, sadly, during the wars during the 90s, that mosque got destroyed, and I know it devastated me personally, because in a way it played a big part in my formation, and because my family really wasn't all that religious, at least overtly. The sight of that mosque did shape me and point me to something greater. I'll continue this in one of the next videos. Bye!